Good afternoon. Hello to those of you in the audience. If you could all put on your headphones if you'd like to hear me, that would be excellent. Wave really loudly if you can, or find another set of headphones near you. Hello to everybody in the audience, and just as importantly to those of you online who will be watching in a few weeks. My name is Steve Kendricks. I am the product lead for Amazon ECS. To give you a little bit of background about myself, I was the PM lead for AWS Batch before switching into container services about 3 months ago. I was leading the PM team there, and before that I served 6 years in the United States Army as a military intelligence officer, which is slightly different than what I'm doing today. But it's all about listening to customers and listening to people and understanding what they want to do and what they want to accomplish and delivering on that. Let me talk to you today about ECS, what it is, what we think it's providing for you, why you should use it, and where it's going into the future. We hear things from our customers all the time. Of course, that's one of my primary jobs, is just listening to customers and what they want, especially in the world of containers, since it's such a growing service, such a growing service area. It's becoming more and more important to customer needs. What we constantly hear from customers is just essentially the things that customers always want out of the cloud. They want to be able to focus on delivering applications as fast as possible. They want their infrastructure customized to their needs, not necessarily trying to figure out how they can use a suite of options and which ones are right, and trying to figure out between different sorts of modes of being. They need to figure out, okay, what works and what is set up to function for my application. They want to be able to scale out rapidly, so not just be able to start getting applications running and build and then be able to customize and iterate, but then scale that application out very rapidly without too much overhead. And of course, security and isolation, control access, control permissions in a standardized way. That customer feedback is always what we at AWS, and particularly at ECS, that forms our roadmap and our vision. Our view is by customers seeing that and seeing that us being responsive to those needs and delivering on it, customers are going to be able to become even more agile and find it just easier to use container services as a whole in the cloud. Product velocity goes up, delivery goes up, risk is reduced. So that feedback has driven many investments over the years. You can see a chart here. Obviously, ECS was the first fully managed container orchestrator in the cloud. We released AWS Batch to be responsive to customers who are looking for a batch HPC performance solution for their workloads. We launched Amazon Fargate, AWS Fargate as well. Again, people are very familiar with Fargate at this point in terms of providing flexibility and providing an opinionated, simple, easy to understand, but highly secure environment to run their container workloads. A few years ago, we launched EFS for Fargate. We launched Graviton support as in Amazon as a whole, but particularly for Fargate, we see customers really enjoying that ability to see improved price performance for their workloads. And we continue to iterate. So last year, for example, we launched ECS Anywhere, which allows customers to use ECS both on premises and in cloud and on the edge. And I'll talk a little bit more about ECS Anywhere and where we see that going. We launched App Runner, a fully managed service to make it easy for customers to quickly deploy containerized web applications and APIs at scale. Right? And so the idea here, if you can see the trend, obviously 2022 is just getting started, and we're excited to be able to show you some of the things that we're working on now and into the future. But one of the things if you see kind of this trend, is we are looking to deliver more and more things that make the application building experience on your behalf easier. Right? So we will take away the infrastructure management. Again, the AWS-y things are things that Amazon has done for years at this point. We want to make it, right, infrastructure, network. Customers don't want to build infrastructure. They want to build their applications. We will take that and handle it to you, and we're only doing more and more of it over time if you see kind of this trend, and we're going to continue to be doing that for you moving forward. We do all this on an unprecedented scale. ECS runs some of the largest workloads in existence today. We launch on average 1 billion containers per week and 3,000 per second. We run 70,000 API requests a second and help some of the largest companies in the world. I'll give you an example of my time when I was working on AWS Batch, which runs directly on top of ECS. Mobileye is one of the car manufacturing companies who was kind enough to give us a reInvent talk a few years back. They are running workloads on AWS Batch to help simulate autonomous vehicle workloads and run hundreds of thousands of containers concurrently on top of AWS Batch and therefore on top of ECS. Other customers, we've demonstrated the capability to run millions of CPUs concurrently, spin them up in less than an hour, use them at a high rate of utilization, and then spin them all back down rapidly after the work is completed. Again, it gives you an idea of the scale at which ECS can support your workloads, right? One of the key customers that any AWS service has is one of the largest in the world, and that would be Amazon.com, to give you another example, right? So not only does ECS power our customers' workloads and some of those workloads, but we also power Amazon as a whole, both in AWS and in the retail website, the retail side and the logistics side in larger Amazon, right? So for example, SageMaker would be a big example, and it's not just the platform that those customers run on. Obviously, right, SageMaker and other companies, these listed up here are just the ones I can tell you about, and some of the ones, it's not just these services running customer workloads, it's also Amazon running their own workloads, for example, machine learning workloads directly on ECS as well. And so the internal processes that we have supported are then pushed out to you as well, so we can iterate and deliver faster. Why do customers choose ECS? Primarily because of ease of use, and you can just simply go faster on ECS. Get to production, right? That's a metric that customers tell us is really important for them, is just time to production of actual workloads. From just the setup, let me explore, it's particularly for customers who are exploring the cloud for the first time, or customers who are bringing applications from an on-premises environment into the cloud, right? The ability to take that, test it out, and get an app working in production is really, really important to customers these days. It's always been important, but it's only going to continue to get more important. Turnkey integration with all common AWS services, obviously features like IAM, load balancers, security groups, ECR, CloudWatch, right? ECS is also proven in scale, as I just talked about. So the idea being, if you're going to choose a service that is doing work for you and needs to be able to scale out massively and support your workloads, that's something that ECS prides itself on delivering for customers. Best of all, that the total cost of ownership, and there's no infrastructure management, especially in terms of control plane, right? ECS itself is free. You pay for the resources, be it EC2 or Fargate or storage that you use, but the ECS, all the stuff that ECS is doing for you in terms of orchestration management, that of course is free. There's no control plane management. There's nothing to worry about from that. That's something that we take away completely from you. All right, I'm going to dive deeper into some of the details across those key benefits that I just said before. Right, every company, we say these days, it's a popular term. Every company is a software company because either they produce software or they use software to run their business. Often, and many times, we see the latter becoming more and more true. We want to free customers' time managing infrastructure so that they can invest in applications where they'll get better benefits. When we talk about fully managed, the benefit of that is clearly faster time to market. It's a huge differentiator for a customer's business because they can innovate much faster and stay ahead of competition. Fully managed container services allow for end-to-end automation for least operational overhead. Right? It's essentially a no operations environment as much as we can get it, and we're obviously constantly trying to improve that part. Just focus on your applications. We invest many engineering hours into ensuring the system is performant and reliable, right, with our SLAs that we publish for you. ECS is available, of course, across all of our AWS regions, including China and EC2, Fargate local zones, wavelength, outposts, especially becoming more and more important, as you may have seen and heard from this summit, Edge, for example, being a new and more important term getting thrown out there. With ECS Fargate, of course, obviously is a huge selling point for customers. Customers get a serverless experience, do not have to manage the EC2 instances themselves. So not only do we take away the control plane management, we take away the EC2 instance management from you. It is the fastest growing segment in ECS and where we expect a lot of growth. And I'll just say fastest growing segment in containers as a whole, and where we expect a lot of growth to come from as well. We do that with a managed control plane, serverless compute without AMIs, and familiarity with AWS. If you know AWS, you know ECS. All right, as we spoke, and I told you I'd talk a little bit more about edge, hybrid, that sort of thing. We spoke to many of our large customers, ISVs that we were supporting and were supporting us. We were constantly hearing was a good need to operate a separate local container management software in hybrid environments for good reasons. There's particularly reasons listed up in here. Customers may have a specific purpose to keep workloads closer to them, whether it's data management, security, or simply investments that they have on their insight infrastructure. There are 4 key challenges. Again, they're listed up here. I'm not going to list through them all, but particularly things like consistency is where we really want to deliver for customers. Consistency in their application architecture. Let's say that the customer needs, for whatever reason, because of data gravity, for example, that there needs to be certain applications that are stored locally, either on premises or on edge devices, or maybe for latency reasons, right? Some applications simply need to be running on premises. I'm thinking, for example, and I'm stretching the word here of what on premises means, right? If you want to call it edge, you can call it edge. If you want to call it a local device, you can call it a local device, but essentially what I mean here is something that's not in the cloud. Think of like a point of sale machine at a restaurant, right? So that is something that could be considered an edge device, right? But consistency across experience for that application developer is really important. And that's something that we delivered with ECS, right? And we think that ECS Anywhere is a market-defining service. So you can run ECS Anywhere essentially anywhere, right? If you want to run it on a Raspberry Pi, you can run it on a Raspberry Pi. And what we think ECS Anywhere can do is provide that consistent experience against both on-prem, however you want to define on-prem, and then also in the cloud. And what we think we've found here is that ECS provides a cloud-managed infrastructure, right? That control plane lives in the cloud, and that allows us to provide a consistent experience across your environments, right? So rather than having, again, think about that point of sale system, it doesn't have 64 CPUs to run potentially an entire control plane right there on the device, and then also be able to do whatever work it's doing, and then also report back up the logs and metrics and whatever it needs to report back to the control plane, right? That's something that we, with a centralized control plane in the cloud, can do for customers, right? So ECS Anywhere customers no longer need to operate separate local container management software, right? Mesos or Kubernetes, that customers are able to run simply with ECS across both the on-prem and in the cloud. Okay, switch to the next topic. That only works, right? That consistent experience, but also for other applications only works if you have something performant to drive there. Again, think about something where you have many different point of sale machines running. With that centralized control plane, you need a highly performant and scalable control plane. Obviously, what I'm about to talk about also applies to traditional, which is funny that this is now that the cloud container world is now becoming traditional cluster in the cloud. Last year we've been working significantly on the speed and scale on what ECS, particularly ECS Fargate, can do for customers in terms of performance and scale out. So for example, we now support up to a 20 times faster launch rate in terms of tasks per second launched for ECS Fargate than what we were able to support even the year before. Just in about a month ago, actually a little bit less than a month ago, about a few weeks ago, ECS more than doubled the number of container instances that you can have in a single cluster. We went from 2,000 to 5,000. Right, so that kind of gives you the idea of where customers are pushing us. It's not just that we do this because we think that at some later date customers may want to run these sorts of very large workloads that require 20 tasks a second sustained TPS rate. It's that customers are already pushing us there and we're responding to them. With this and other improvements we made this year, for example, in a specific case, a large high-tech customer who was taking 99 minutes to launch 500 tasks, including scale up the EC2 instances, now only takes 16 minutes to launch the same 500 tasks. Another fast-growing company whose deployments of 100 tasks were taking 320 seconds is now able to deploy them in under 90 seconds, right? So that's the sort of thing that we need to drive for customers. You're going to see this continue to improve ECS. We consider performance to be one of our key value propositions. In some ways because performance is, I'm gonna skip that slide, performance is the same thing in many ways as stability. Stability is the same thing in many ways as performance, right? So if we can't provide you something performant, then that introduces complexity into your system, and that's the number one thing that we don't want to have. We want to have simplicity for you, right? So I'll give you an example of the ECS workloads that I'm talking about out of Toronto, building a cloud surveillance platform. It allows cameras to be easily connected, but the challenge was that they had to streamline management and automation across third-party on-prem data centers. So they needed a solution that was easy to manage, but again, this is new territory for a lot of customers. It's new territory for Amazon, frankly, so it's new territory for our customers as well, for understanding how are we supposed to orchestrate our workloads across these different on-prem data centers. They need a solution that was easy to manage, and they found it with ECS Anywhere. Low footprint, easy to learn because they already knew ECS and they already knew AWS, right? They realized a 10x improvement in their operational cost and deployment efficiency as a result, without, crucially, needing to go find people with specialized skills and understanding how to do this, because we provided something that just worked for them, right? I'm going to go back to this other slide. Let's talk about simplicity here again, right? This is what we hear customers talking to us when making choices between, for example, Kubernetes or even Mesos and moving to ECS. Right? Aerobotics is a customer who switched over from using Kubernetes to us. Challenges was that it meant that their team had to manage the underlying EC2 instances, right, and through node groups for the data plane, and they found it difficult, frankly, to keep utilization up. It was essentially 50% was the best utilization rate that they could find, which of course generally translates to a 50% more spend per month than what they needed. They need a sustainable data processing architecture, negligible overhead for it, low infrastructure costs, and serverless compute for utilization and management, right? Data plane is what we would not necessarily consider to be a directly revenue generating process. It is something that we need to minimize the overhead costs for and the exceptional costs for as much as possible. They looked around within AWS for an event-based container management solution and found a good solution with step functions integration with ECS on Fargate. Easy to implement because they understood AWS. Obviously, ECS has close integration with step functions, so it was just simply a matter of plugging them together. They further reduced their overhead with managing storage with Fargate through the 20 gigabyte ephemeral storage that comes with Fargate. Right, essentially, if there's one message I've been trying to get across here, it's choose less and feel better. It's not only the fact that you need to realize, especially when you're onboarding and you're trying to figure out which service is right for you, and let's think about all the different options that come with open source solutions and the many different correct ways, frankly, to do things, right? There are very many correct ways. There are definitely many bad ways to do things. And with ECS, you just take a lot of that away, right? We understand, especially given that we've been doing this for a number of years now, we understand what customers need in terms of opinionated but powerful systems to enable you to run your applications faster and better. It's in some ways about choosing an entire ecosystem. That's the philosophy that drives ECS and the platform that it supports. Let's talk a little bit more about simplicity, right? There are two challenges with open source based orchestrators. One, you have to make a lot of decisions about which tools you're going to pick for a particular job. Second, let's say as a DevOps team, you have to buy into that ecosystem philosophy, and that means that you lose the ability to customize and pick tools to some greater extent. I was recently talking to one of our customers and asked them why they chose ECS. This customer is a successful and fast-growing pre-IPO startup. Their DevOps teams wants the ability to pick and choose tools to build a platform on top of. With ECS, we help them do that, right? We pick tools and we help customize the integration with those tools based on our customers and what they need in order to be successful. We defer, obviously, to AWS first solution, but where we see customer interest in other tooling, we pick those partners and to help give customers a choice. For example, first-class integrations, obviously, with AWS services such as Code Deploy, KMS, IAM, and all the rest that you would expect. Built-in integration in terms of sending out metrics and logs to CloudWatch and being able to customize those and pull those out. And then extensive third-party integrations through partners such as Datadog, Aqua, Harness, HashiCorp, of course. So right, there's an entire ecosystem here that AWS supports, or that ECS supports, right? Most of these, obviously, you see are AWS integrations, of course, right? We built those, we value those. You can get many sessions in this summit against why those we think are great choices for you and for your customers, but that doesn't mean that we try and box you in, especially if it's something that you need, especially with integrations among the partners that you see here. We're continuing to push hard to deliver new features and improvements across both our integrations with AWS and our integrations with partners. Let's talk a little bit about application-first interfaces to develop on ECS. We want customers to continue to move up the stack. I talked about that a little bit earlier in the presentation. Focus on managing applications and rather than focusing on code. Right? There's two key aspects to this. Infrastructure as code and application level abstractions to hide the complexity. CDK extensions for ECS gives customers choice in their infrastructure as code paradigm. Right? We have a rich set of extensions available today and will continue to invest in adding more to them. Right? In terms of application level abstractions, we have AWS Copilot. Copilot gives you application first abstractions, which solves the problem of stitching together infrastructure for a production environment. Copilot just simply provides the best practices for you. It gives you guided experiences to go from a Docker file to a production-ready ECS Fargate service within minutes. Within minutes, you can request a web service, you can schedule jobs, you can schedule a batch job if you want to, you can publish and subscribe services, anything that you need just simply provided for you. These choices are written to a simple manifest file where you can go and tweak values best suited to your application, right? So it kind of goes back to the easy setup. We give you opinionated choices, but obviously if you need something specific to your app, you can change those. We set up a CI/CD pipeline to automatically deploy your application to multiple environments like testing and production. We have operational commands to view alarms, filter, et cetera, et cetera. This sort of product is one of the things that I talk about in terms of onboarding teams easily and early into the development process to speed time to production for your customers, and then gives you the flexibility to help you scale out in the future. Let's talk about ECS as enterprise ready in terms of particularly scaling out, as I just mentioned. A key element of building a DevOps platform is the need to keep it secure. Let me talk about and that goes back to the third pillar of differentiation, which I talked about earlier, right at the beginning of this presentation, which is security. ECS runs today at enterprise scale, as we sometimes say, Amazon scale. As you saw earlier, a lot of Amazon services, both internal to AWS, some applications that run on Amazon.com, the retail side, and then some applications that are AWS services that are exposing, essentially, we're running customer workloads on top of ECS underneath the hood. A key part about why these internal Amazon services, as well as large enterprises externally, choose ECS is about how we make running securely and meeting compliance easy for customers. ECS builds on top of extensive compliance certifications that AWS platform is validated for. This makes meeting compliance needs easy because you have essentially, right, one vendor, which is Amazon, who's a trusted application for some of the world's, or trusted vendor for some of the world's most sensitive workloads, taking care of it, and it's integrated across your entire stack. The second area is how we make setting up access and configuration management out of the box, native to how you any all right? Particularly if you're using IAM, if you're using if you're using any other Amazon service, you've probably done this yourself. It's integrated and managed in terms of like networking, logging, encryption, secrets management, compliance, right? It's all essentially the same, very similar and very familiar. You don't have to worry about managing and updating all the different third-party tools that you're using every time you need an upgrade. The best defense mechanism for staying secure is staying current, of course, and rather than needing a large service team, right, or we might say like an SRE to manage all of this, you just can use ECS. It drastically simplifies this because we've delivered something that is at the scale of what one of the largest companies in the world needs. Finally, logical clusters for managing tenancy, right? So essentially, we have the idea of a cluster. The ECS cluster can be in separate security groups, but then we also have the idea of a Fargate task. The Fargate task has its own isolation boundary, does not share the underlying kernel. And so what that means is that it's container isolation by design. You do not need to, especially if you're building different users on top of it in the same cluster, you do not need to worry about the same task landing on the same machine and somehow having an interaction. We do that for you. All right, let's talk about price performance with ECS. One of the things that we talk about is, okay, with ECS doing all this for you, maybe it's expensive, maybe it's too managed, maybe it's slow. With ECS, you don't need to worry about that. And particularly with Fargate, we're continuing to increase and improve the price and performance. One big thing being AWS Graviton, which we supported with Fargate. Now, especially with Graviton and ARM-based chips becoming more important to customers as they continue to look to improve their cost of ownership in the cloud, right? We're right there with you. We're going to be improving or increasing, I should say, the task sizes and task configurations that you can run, both in terms of CPU, so 8 and 16 task sizes will be coming soon, and those will have corresponding memory sizes on the box as well, right? And then if you combine that with Graviton, you'll get even greater price performance. GPUs is on the roadmap and coming soon as well. So these are things that we are doing to improve the experience of Fargate for you well into the future. Let's talk about capacity providers. Not everybody can use Fargate. As we start to grow these use cases, right, we have the Graviton, we're gonna have GPUs, we're gonna have larger task sizes, but it doesn't work for everybody. And therefore, we also work on scale out performance for EC2 as well, and that's what we use capacity providers for. Businesses need to respond to customer demand. Of course, one of the whole points of elasticity is that you can increase the amount of compute that you have over the day, and you can shrink it, and ECS will help manage that for you. Obviously, we talk about Fargate, and Fargate improves the needs to operationalize this because now you don't need to worry about AMI management and that sort of thing. But again, that doesn't work for everybody. At least it doesn't right now. So we have capacity providers, and what that means is you can use it to scale out EC2 capacity as you go, particularly if maybe you're using a hybrid model of both Fargate and EC2 for varying reasons. Some customers tell us that that's a pattern that they enjoy. Capacity providers is able to shift workload traffic across both of those, and then also do it across spot and on demand, right? So again, Spot being one of our most popular compute choices, we have both Fargate and Fargate Spot and you can save up to 70 and in many cases up to 90% in terms of cost of Spot. And ECS capacity providers will help you with that in terms of being able to scale out and scale in. This is one of the fundamental areas of improvement that ECS is going to be working on as well, is that ability to scale out and in applications with capacity providers for you. And that's what you're going to continue to see us iterate on over the next, well, I would say over the next year, but it's probably a lifelong effort to increase performance. As we all know, customers get more and more demanding, and that means that we need to improve performance more and more. So continue to look for improvements in that. What else we're working on? ECS native deployments. Faster time to market comes from how developers make deployments. So customers told us especially what they need. The ability to do advanced deployment strategies rapidly, managed, right? Better observability and troubleshooting, and reduce the costs of making deployments. One of the things that we talked about customers is trying to spin up a bunch of tasks, place all the new instances or place all the new services on top of the tasks, and then shut down all the other ones, right? That can be costly, especially as development cycles get faster. You need to do this process more and more and more in order to stay current and make sure that your applications are up to date. And so we realize, okay, there's an opportunity to help drive customer value here by helping you manage this. To give you a sneak peek, we'll introduce out-of-the-box deployment strategies and essentially blue-green canary observability for deployments, safe deployments with automated rollback and built-in practice configurations. After that, we'll enable the capability to remove the need for load balancers for traffic shifting. With these capabilities, you would not have to manage co-deploy templates for your services. It'll essentially just work for you as you work. Something else that we're working on is networking, a new way to do networking for container services. Customers use ECS to build modern distributed applications that consist of a number of services that need to communicate with each other. To ensure that applications can handle partial loss of services with no downtime, customers spend significant effort writing code and configuring networking infrastructure. Customers choosing load balancers for service-to-service communication with ECS need to carefully plan for configuring their infrastructure for high availability and incur additional infrastructure cost. Using ECS service discovery often requires developers to write custom application code for collecting traffic metrics and for making network calls resilient, right? To give you an idea of the biggest problems. AWS's solution for delivering seamless integration of ECS microservice comprising an application is going to, we think, change the world of ECS container networking. It provides an application-centric approach to networking with strongly opinionated defaults, which makes deploying and operating applications on ECS easy. We plan to enable a built-in service discovery across VPCs, accounts, and clusters. Your service communication with ECS Service Connect is more resilient with automated health checking, call retries, and even load distribution across your ECS tasks, right? So you get real-time traffic insights for your service communication and controls over the deployments with easy-to-use traffic shifting mechanisms. All right, so that kind of concludes the presentation from my end. I'm going to be available, although please, we're going to move into the back if you have some questions. Please hold your applause for the other presenters here. It can be somewhat a little tricky with kind of a session like this where everybody's sitting in an open room like this. So please hold your applause. What I hope I've communicated to you is that ECS can provide you the most performant as well as the simplest platform to develop your applications. And I'm happy to take any questions a little bit later in the back, unless these nice people are glaring at me in the background. So we may have to go outside to avoid disruptions. So thank you. Please hold your applause, and thank you.